today we'll go through some regional prophecies of Vyacheslav and a few other sources, which will not cover all the parts of the world, for sure, but as he said, they are kind of examples illustrating how the experience of the people in different regions will be actually very, very different during the end times in a way. And then in the next one or two episodes, I will switch back to dynamics of the events, like for example the first episode was. And then in the last Vyacheslav episode, there will be notes about his personal life, because he is gone, but his mother is here, and that will play a big role. And after the regional prophecies, we'll see a few questions like this one, which I think are very important. And then the prayer for protection against abduction by evil spirits or aliens, or against those creatures, worms and dinosaurs, which according to Vyacheslav will be crawling out from the underworld in a couple of years. It is a prayer for protection from all the members of the parasitic family. And then in the next appendix will be about how to attempt to make holy water yourself, because Vyacheslav regularly urged us to bury supplies of water as much as possible, because the water will disappear completely. And then he always also recommended that the best will be to bury holy water, because it stays good longer, at least 40 years or forever. And I was wondering, well, how to procure that. The church doesn't seem to be the place to get it anymore. Probably the priest is already marked with the mark of the beast. And the paraphernalia and the items around, many of them probably have kind of hidden satanic symbols, so I'm not sure how holy will be that holy water. So I may have some solution for that. It will be a lovely sunny day in the Baltic regions. The radars will not register earthquake or anything at all out of the ordinary. And all of a sudden, without any warning at all, 30 meters high wave will come from the sea and sweep up everything. After the wave, there will be no debris at all. There will be only sand. The city of Vladivostok, again a coastal region, will be destroyed in the very same way. Only one antique street light post will stick out of the fields of fine sand. And Vyacheslav said that these are just two random examples of the fate of many coastal regions during the tribulation. Saint Patrick, the patron saint of Ireland, he, along with some other local saints, he left predictions confirming this and saying that Ireland will be wiped out completely by a single enormous wave, and that will happen 7 years before the last day. The last day is just another expression for the judgment day, as far as I understand. Saint Patrick saw that as a great blessing for the Irish nation, because that will save them from seeing the bloody reign of the Antichrist. And since the Irish prophecy seems to come from a number of old sources, that's why I have included it here in the chart as one of the signs that the tribulation begins. When Nina spoke of the sinking of Japan, she also mentioned that it will be kind of the beginning, in the beginning of the ordeal, so maybe it's kind of correlated, the fate of the coastal regions. The devils, the parasites, they will also poison a huge lake of drinking water in Iraq. They will organize an oil spill crude oil in large quantities, and that will be an enormous ecological catastrophe. It will just poison everything around. So people will be trying to desperately clean up, and eventually they will manage to clean up the oil, but the water will remain poisoned. They will have no solution for that. And this will be a big problem for that dry and hot region. So what will happen then, Otrok Vyacheslav explained, is that by this point of time his remains would be in Moscow. It seems his identity will be also properly revealed by a very old book that they will find, so he will be way more famous than he is now. And then after this ecological catastrophe, when the water is poisoned, they will take his remains with a plane and put him on the shore of the lake, and he will help. In this situation he will help, unlike the situation with the giant fault in China, where they will also take him, but he will not be able to help because it will not be the will of the Lord. As far as Israel, he mentioned very shortly whatever we already know from the Bible, and that all the Arabs will rise against them and besiege them from all sides. The Israelis will fight very bravely, but as we know from the Bible, they will lose. I'm not sure is that episode before or after the coronation. Moreover, the biblical and the Arabic sources suggest a number of wars in those regions, so it's not sure which one is Vyacheslav talking about. As far as America, as I mentioned earlier, he said that first they will blow 2 tall towers, then a bridge, and then the Statue of Liberty. The same party who are organizing everything, he mentions them quite explicitly. I use more like a general name. So I'm not sure if the episode with the bridge has already happened, because he explained that initially people will doubt that it is a man-made disaster, but then they will decide that the bridge collapsed itself. Was there maybe something like this happening already or not? I'm not sure. But the Statue of Liberty will be the last, and when they blow that up, it will kind of start moving from the explosion, and only then it will collapse, and there will be no attempt to rebuild it or anything. And also I believe Vyacheslav mentioned that at a later stage the United States will no longer be united. The individual states will start existing on their own, which is also there in a number of other prophecies as well, which we already covered. Now, as far as the fate of the Caucasus region, of the Caucasus Mountains, Vyacheslav said that after I depart, an endless war will start, and where I will be buried, he said, there will be the graves of many young soldiers who will die in those wars. And that's exactly how it happened, because the father of Vyacheslav, he had a minor rank in the military, so they lived in a town devoted to the military in the Ural regions of Russia. And later on, during the apocalypse, Vyacheslav said the Caucasus region will be partially submerged by giant mud flood, and because at that time it will be very hot and dry, this mud will solidify very fast and it will become very hard. The layer will be very thick, so basically the hills and the mountains, they will stick out like islands with a bit of vegetation sticking out from the desert of petrified mud. And speaking about the Caucasus region, there was a prominent saint canonized there, Gavril Urgebadze. He must be a reliable source because even while he was alive, many healing miracles took place. So, as far as the future during the apocalyptic times of his country, Georgia, he said that, as everywhere else, the unmarked people will be prosecuted, but to lesser extent. It will be milder over there in Georgia, not as bad as Russia, for example. And back then, some 30, 40 years ago, he was telling the younger monks and nuns, you will live until the time of the Antichrist, you will see him. He described the people which he saw in our times as women becoming like men and men like women in terms of the hairstyle and the clothes they wear. Eventually, the zombie fight will start wonder naked. I don't know. Did he mean completely naked or like swimming suit style naked, which is also pretty naked for the standards of a monk? But then he said the noble people, they will continue wearing normal clothes, and sometimes people will be chased by the zombies, by the marked people, just for wearing normal clothes. That's how they will recognize the normal people. He also saw people being implanted on the index finger. And as Vyacheslav warned that bamboozling the confused crowd with talk and holographic images of aliens will be a major way to mark them. He said that they will be showing all kinds of sights to behold in the skies, but it will be all fake. It will be all staged to defraud the people and at the end mark them under all kinds of pretext after showing them spectacular images. And this, he said, will be going on big time. While he was still alive, he said now there are still wise monks who will help you and guide you and who will answer your questions with the truth. But when the apocalypse comes, before its very beginning, God will withdraw many of his best people, and there will be almost nobody to take refuge in, to take advice from. By the way, did you know that in the Vatican they had even a conference, a big meeting already discussing, inviting, getting ready for the aliens? And after the meeting, they came up with all these public statements that we are ready to meet them and maybe baptize them, or maybe we learn from them. And there were even statements, maybe the aliens will clear for us the blurry places in the Bible. Oh, how eagerly they will unblur everything for such deluded people. And all that you can conduct online, of course. Permanently move your church online so that they can track every word easier. Once Vyacheslav's mother was reading the Bible, and there was a verse saying, and the sea burned, and together with it the sky burned, and after that the land was different, and there was no sea, and the sky was different. And she wondered, what is this all about? Where is this sea? And she asked him, and he said, this is the Black Sea, mother. It will burn because the seas, now we see water, but this is actually a very, very thin layer on the top. Deep there, at great depth, actually, these worms live. And that layer is much thicker than the water layer. And these worms, the deeper you go, the more giant they get. on the bottom of the Black Sea, you get only small worms, like smaller cousins, and that's why the water is very, very murky and unclean in that sea because of the waste of all these worms. So, because of the waste of this discharged by these worms who have been living there for a very, very long time, there is a kind of a bubble below the sea of hydrogen sulfate, which is highly flammable. And this is a disaster waiting to happen. And when the spark of the apocalypse breaks this bubble free and ignites the entire thing, really, he said, as the Bible says, the sea will burn and even the sky will burn. First, there will be one big explosion, very big, that will literally shatter the regions around the sea. Part of the coastal regions will be destroyed. Maybe in Turkey, his mother doesn't remember very well. And there will be subsequent explosions while this gas gets loose more and more from the bubble. It will burn, but those secondary explosions will be smaller. There is a big Russian city called Odessa on the shores of the Black Sea, and he said that still many people will be saved even in that city, because what will happen is because of the explosion, a large pipe under pressure with drinking water from the municipality, it will crack in such a way that it will form a kind of a fountain. And that fountain, that stream of water, which will be huge because the pipe will be very big, it will kind of clear a little bit of the toxins so that some people in Odessa can be saved. Once Vyacheslav's mother asked him, "Why I hear you talk to people more often about hell, and you describe how the souls suffer there, and I hear very little from you about how heaven is. Sometimes you say things, but it is not much." Vyacheslav replied that the current people, as they are now, they are not yet developed to understand heaven anyway. But hell, I tell them often about that, so that at least maybe some of them will get shocked and will decide not to take the path leading to that place. Vyacheslav's mother read that during the time of the Antichrist, even many good people will be defrauded by his tricks and will take his mark, although in nature, in heart, they are actually good. Vyacheslav replied that yes, there will be many such good people. And what will happen to them is that for them the integration will be way more difficult, because those who already have demonic qualities developed in their personality, everything will, as modern people say, resonate with the lifestyle suggested by the Antichrist anyway. So for them there won't be that much of a drastic difference, alcoholism, debauchery, how they call it, binge drinking, this type of lifestyle. But as far as the good people, because when the marked zombies, when they turn into cyborgs, they will still keep their memory from the times they were human. So for the zombies who were good people before, they will have very hard time adjusting because that will not be their nature. And their memories of the times when they were human will torment them very, very much. So such people will go through a period of very deep emotional distress before they eventually integrate into the devilish cyborg society and community. But they will eventually integrate because everybody who gets the mark surely will. There is no atonement, there is no surgical removal, there is no purification, there is no detoxification from that, and they will be involved in all those atrocities and disgusting stuff because they will be dictated, ordered to do so by the main server, which manages them as half humans, half machines, in other words, cyborgs. There will be no forgiveness for anybody who has taken the mark. Vyacheslav confirmed again and again. Here, in the Prophecies I published last year, it was there that they will start drafting women compulsory in many countries, and it is already beginning. Yes, indeed, black magic is absolutely condemned by God. But yet, if you read the Bible and the Quran in terms of how our world and existence function, you will find out that according to them, we really live in magical reality created by God, by His Word. Also in the Vedas, in the beginning was Shabda Brahma, this magical sound, subtle sound from which eventually Lord manifested our entire existence together with the worlds, heavens, hells. And in the Bible, again, they say in the beginning it was the word of the Lord. Shabda Brahma is called the word, or in more common language, benevolent magical spell, white magic. Partially, this predicament into which you ended is because in the Middle Ages they kind of demonized the word magic by putting it into the meaning of only black magic. That's a part of their plan of how to use the church to confuse the people instead of educating them. And even in the Bible, I don't know the story very well, but was it Jesus who explained that if you understand and believe in your true self, you will be able to make all these things which you call miracles that I make. And they started also walking on water like him, but later on they couldn't believe their eyes and started thinking something of that sort. I'm not a Bible expert, but what I try to illustrate is why in the church and probably in Islam as well, until date, there are lots of controversies where exactly godly miracle ends and where black magic starts. And this type of controversies, they will never find their true answer in this current church paradigm, which is so simplified into black and white, that they don't even register that in the real world there is an entire spectrum of wonderful colors which are different from white and black. And even in this white and black reality into which they try to put the believers in, even in that they cannot find the answer, because the godly miracles in the Church of Ice, they look, well, magical, and they have already demonized that word. So, to speak in practical words, sometimes Christian saints, they would put, they call it prayer in herbs, and in this way heal people. And then their fellow, whatever, bishops will accuse them of, you see, you're putting spells. I mean, where is the clearly stated by God boundary between putting a prayer on a herb and putting a spell? Actually, a prayer is a spell, that is the mantra. So once you personally decide to go beyond definition and see the true nature of things, then you will be less perplexed. It's irrelevant how you will decide to define magic. The important is to understand the essence of things. Now, let's see your exact question. Why do I mention civilizations which used magical practices? Set, I think you mean the set books of Jane Roberts. Well, actually, if you start reading those books, you will see for yourself that Set doesn't recommend any magical, according to biblical definition, which I assume is your definition, practice at all. All he talks about is changing in what you believe, exactly as it is recommended in the Bible. 100% exactly. So the actual question here is, who misled you to think that Seth recommends magical practices, although probably you have not even read the material? And I mean, think for yourself. This must be the source which has led you thinking that way, must be very superficial. Will you trust that source in important times for your soul as the apocalyptic, or it will be better to start sorting out the things for yourself? Now, the other one is very interesting. Why do I mention the Egyptians when they were full of black magic? They were really, some of them. Literally by all definitions. Well, for I mentioned them for the same reason that they are mentioned again and again in the Bible, to give bad example. I have very good reasons to believe that I myself had a birth in really ancient Egypt, and I went big time wrong exactly in that particular birth, and I've been mentioning it number of times in the previous videos, just to bring this message. Don't do that, because after those mistakes, that ruined dozens of lives for me. 3 of them in a row in hell, 3 times reborn there. As far as I understand, exactly for the mistakes made in Egypt. So why do I mention it? To warn you not to do the same mistake, and to confirm from my personal experience what Vyacheslav came to tell you. Why he died in such a way. Just he died so that he is able to tell you all this, that God will forgive nobody who takes the mark. However, the situation with ancient and allegedly ancient Egypt is not that simple at all. First of all, most of what we call ancient Egypt is actually post-Christ Egypt. That's why they have the Ankh symbol, the cross. That is nothing else but a Christian cross. That is what seems to transpire from the artifacts. You can see my previous videos on Egypt, and mostly the research of the new chronology project by Anatoly Fomenko. Plenty of evidence over there. So why do I mention all this? Well, to bring the truth out there, because you seem to come from like biblical background, but to understand the Bible properly, you need at least a basic historic orientation, and in school you got historic disorientation. So I think Egypt is well worth mentioning, And the really big megaliths like the pyramids, probably the Osirian, I do believe that those were pre-Christ era buildings, and there are many more of them. That's why in Egypt they're so fanatical about preventing people from digging the ground in any way, even to bury their deceased, because they don't want to bring the old big megaliths in public view, because that will reveal some of the true history and will cast the shadow of doubt even on biblical interpretations of what is condemned by God and when and why. Because it seems there was a time of big time betrayal in Egypt. There are few sources about it. But as the story goes, Egypt was relatively pure place of godly magic. I don't know how you call that, but maybe a place where people revered the benevolent God Father. And after that, the betrayal took place. And also, as far as I understand, the society somehow eventually managed by itself within to overthrow these usurpators. And also what I find very sad is that many Christian people are very confused about Hinduism. They think it's a place of many gods, but in Hinduism, all these gods, they are aspects, they are qualities of what in Christianity you people call God Father. That is the Brahman, and Shiva, Devi, Vishnu. These are all manifestations of this Brahman. That's why they have the status of Bhagavan, manifestation of the Lord. But the original Lord is one. There aren't multiple gods. The male forms are called Bhagavan, and the females Bhagavati. That is just the feminine form. But they are one and the same soul. This is accepted pretty much by all Hindu schools, which are numerous. Actually, there is no religion like Hinduism. There is no central governing body. There are multiple. There is a plethora of philosophies, but about Bhagavan and one single Brahman, that is something which is pretty much accepted by everybody. Yes, there are different lords in Hinduism, exactly like here we have lords of different area. Even here we have a graf in the village. His whatever grandfather was a real graf of a big chunk of Europe. This doesn't mean that his grandfather was one of the gods in heaven. He was a lord. So this is how the parasites use this the double meaning of words to confuse people and divide and conquer, make them quarrel with each other. Um, like in Hinduism, there is the Lord of the wind, Vayu. He is really a original Lord who worships Bhagavan. He is not in the illusion himself that he is the Lord. And in the Bible, what they say, don't worship idols. Look in the sky, and that will be your Lord. Does it mean that the sky is what to say, the only Godfather or one of the Lords? Or also Jesus appeared in different visions to various saints? So these were like different visions. Does it mean that in Christianity you have many gods? No, it doesn't. Then why do you call the different visions in Hinduism different lords? You call it because you were misled by the school teacher, by you're being misled every day by the mass media. All this is divide and conquer. Not only the figure of the Godfather matches perfectly across all major religions actually, but now talking about comparison of Hinduism and Christianity, the Holy Trinity is fully present in Hinduism. God the Father is the Brahman, the original and one and only God. Paramatma is the Holy Spirit because in Christianity it is described as a feature of the Lord which is present in the heart of each and every living being, and that's exactly how Paramatma is described in the Vedas. But still, most Christians are convinced that Hinduism will be a civilization with magical practices condemned by the Lord. And why do they believe that? Because they have heard it from the other Christians who just repeat what they have heard without understanding and without studying the things. That's what it is all about. So the reason of the entire ambiguity you mentioned is that, for example, Christians, they just repeat what they have heard from the TV without checking themselves the old sources of the other religions. That's all. Other ways in which they make people quarrel with no reasons is they say, look at Durga with all her weapons, and she's got a skull garland around her neck. How cruel, and compared to the pure and white Jesus Christ. All these skulls that she is wearing, these are trophies, these are the heads of the head parasites which she killed by the request of the noble people in the previous worlds, because our earth is actually quite young. Before that there were previous earths, previous phases, and people were facing similar problems, and every time an incarnation of the Lord came and cleaned up the parasites. And if you go to a Christian church and see the angels depicted there, you will see them with all kinds of spears and rather sharp weapons. Believe me, that is for killing. For killing what? Again, parasites. That is the same thing. And this is an important, I think, question. She's asking, why exactly do the parasites organize these wildfires? Why exactly are they dispersing these flammable gases in the skies? Are they recreating the prophecies? She's asking. It is quite possible. I don't know what is going in their sick minds. But they could be using the prophecies for their scenario as well, because they know the end is near, and the only thing that matters for them now is to harvest as many souls as possible. And according to the biblical scenario, they will harvest almost everybody. So they could be recreating or not. The important thing is to understand that all these demonic entities, they cannot do anything constructive, and at the end they will perish together with their evil schemes. These entities are tamasic, and one of the prominent qualities of tamaguna is self-destruction at the end. Whatever they do, this will be the end. There will be no other end for them and for their environment. For example, in the Hermetic prophecies, the lament of Hermes, they were described like this: they will find death more profitable than life. Now, the way you have typed in the question shows that you have invested some time in thinking why exactly would they be provoking these fires. These people are obviously out of their minds, plus it's not a single group, it's different gangs who do not have a single opinion. Only God knows what goes in the cumulative sick mental space of these gangs. But I would like, why I think this question is very important is I would like to point something related to this, the cause of these fires, which is kind of out of your scope. And at the same time, it is affecting you much more personally than any of the listed reasons which came to your mind. Mary Julie Jehani described this problem as this: there will be a type of people who will want to learn all the details of all the scams of the devils. They will waste all their time because the amount of lunatic ideas which the devils generate is endless. Until they live, they will not do anything except nonsense. So it is anyway impossible to figure out which exactly path of self-destruction will they select for suicide. But while one swims in that swamp, one will surely lose one's soul. And Vyacheslav also spoke about this thing, that the people who feel that it is necessary to have a complete understanding of all the madness around, they will all take the mark, because their entire energy will be invested in finding out those details. If we speak in penguinian scientific terms, it's this phenomena that monkey see, monkey do. If one tries to understand too much detail of the lunacy of the parasites in human forms, one will be too much exposed to their symbol and behavior patterns while informing oneself what is actually going on. One may consciously condemn the parasites. However, the way the subconscious mind works, and this is proven by countless experiments, it's a basics of psychology, is whatever we see, whatever we perceive on subconscious level, it is there in our files as possible behavior pattern, and we know that so many things, so many decisions we take subconsciously. And when we have too many parasitic patterns on the file because of overexposure to alternative media, which is mostly wolves in sheep skin, one will become like that. Monkey see, monkey do, and one will be eventually tricked into believing that this is a way, a reality, a way to deal with life, and it's too difficult, and well, let's make a small compromise and take the mark. And since years, I've been talking about this phenomena in future tense, but now I see it happening because I connect with many people, especially the people who are very much into understanding every detail. They're very persistent, some of them, to contact me and necessarily speak to me about all and every detail. And now I checked just to get sure, am I on the right track? Yes, all these people are already some of them have accepted the mark, and the others are, let's see, which means they will also accept it. The attitude in this regard of the simple-hearted religious people who will just wave their hand and say, oh, all these are just devilish things, we don't need that, you know. Some of them even cover their ears when people try to talk about the devilish initiatives. They think it's contaminating to even hear about such things. These people are on the right track in this situation. And they will also have enough personal time to purify their own soul, because this type of research into each and every detail of the parasitic lunacy, that takes a lot of energy. One is so much distracted by the external noise that people who concentrate too much on that, basically they do not have time or even desire to look inside. If they try to do that, they feel lonely. So in other words, to summarize, we are forced to see lots of details of the parasitic lunacy, and we will find out lots of details just by living on Earth. There is no other way. But when it becomes an obsession to find each and every detail, this is something else. This is a short Orthodox prayer recommended by Vyacheslav himself for chasing away parasites. Now, before the non-religious people close the video, please wait a few seconds. I think the prayer may work with the more ancient forms of the cross, which you see now on the screen. I understand that the church cross may have somewhat repulsive effect for some people, because the church is not so holy, all of the church at least nowadays. And we don't want that negativity to reflect on our prayer. That's why even using it with a non-church cross, it should work as well. For example, I myself, inspired by Vyacheslav, I made my own cross. I made a cast with epoxy resin and the corundum, the rose sapphire, which I recommended in previous videos. And I used one of these older forms of the cross, to be more precise, the Bogomil, the Cathar cross. So how to use the prayer? Basically, anytime you feel a demonic presence around, in any form, as ghost or as alien, Vyacheslav said that the way usually these aliens enter into our reality is they get well prepared beforehand. Sometimes in the hospital they take up a minute portion of skin for testing, they say. But actually they hand it over, and just from a very minute amount of human skin, they grow an entire human outfit. And then the demon enters inside, and then he moves around us. And we don't recognize them. So the parasites, they come in all kinds of forms. Or if their human friends are troubling you and you need immediate help, this is a short prayer which can give immediate results. By the way, Alexander Pramonov, who mentions the order of the Hospitalier Knights, he also published this emblem of this order, and as you can see, their cross is also symmetrical. I explained why in previous episodes. It seems to be a good idea to use a symmetrical cross. So I myself use the Slavic text of the prayer, but I also made an English translation, about which many people now will feel, well, this is a little bit too much for me, not my cup of tea. But I hope you keep a copy of it for later on, because in the prophecy it says people will change when they find themselves practically stranded at home. At that time, those who don't have any prayer text or any printed icon, many of them will regret it. Now, when we speak about protection prayers, which is the same as mantras or spells, it's well known from all ancient cultures that one needs initiation into these things. Otherwise, the mantra may not work so well. And the good thing is that we have received this prayer exactly from Vyacheslav, who is one of the last prophets of our times. So we have received it directly from the pure source. That's why I'm publishing it exactly in the form in which he left it to us, because that is important. And here I will read it to you in original. Да воскреснет Бог и расточатся врази Его, и да бежат от лица Его ненавидящие Его, яко исчезает дым, да исчезнут, яко тает воск от лица огня, тако да погибнат беси от лица любящих Бога и знаменующиеся крестным знаменем, и в веселье глаголющих радуйся, пречестный животворящий крест Господень, прогоняя беса и силою на тебе пропятого Господа нашего Иисуса Христа, в ад шедшего и поправшего сила дьяволю, и даровавшего нам тебе крест свой честный на прогнание всякого супостата. О, почестный животворящий крест Господень, помогай мне со святою Госпожею, Девою Богородицею и со всеми святыми во веки. Аминь. So, how exactly to remain protected by this symbol at all times? You will need to wear it on your body every day, non-stop, day and night, without taking it off. It can be small size, and it can be any of these crosses, whichever you prefer. Preferably it should be made with pure, noble materials. As we saw in earlier videos, use pure materials to get pure results. and the strength with which it will protect you will be proportionate to your purity and the intensity with which you charge it with this prayer continuously. Preferably, you could draw or somehow sculpture a bigger cross for your home and your altar, or you can fashion an imaginary, subtle, etheric cross by just imagining it, but then you need to regularly recharge it. Let's say, for example, you imagine a giant cross 20 meters long above your house, like a canopy of protection. You can imagine that one day and recharge it with the prayer a few times, but then it is good to return again and again to the same image. That's how it will kind of solidify in the reality more and more. Because the cross will protect only unmarked people. Because if you accept the mark in any form, you go in the enemy category, so it's not sure what will be the result if you seek protection from it and yet you have joined the camp of the enemies. And same is true with the ritual, which I'm gonna recommend now for making holy water, because Vyacheslav recommended repeatedly to bury supplies of water, and especially if possible holy water, and the more the better. Well, easier said than done, because when I read what is the meaning of holy water, I mean, very few people have access to that nowadays, because most likely the priest who will offer you something like that is already marked, and the paraphernalia in the church has already lots of satanic symbols, so I'm not sure if that holy water is really holy. And that's why I thought of a ritual recommended in the Vedas for kind of offering water or food, or actually any pure thing, to the Lord. And the ritual is the form which I'm gonna tell you about. I don't think it goes against Christianity or even Islam. So, according to Vyacheslav, clean drinking water as it comes from the springs, it's actually kind of a living matter, because it has been made like that by this giant skin-like purification entity or setup below ground. And holy water, he explained, is even superior than living spring water, because it will stay alive and pure for much longer. He said a minimum of 40 years, and if it is really genuine holy water, it will never go bad. So the ritual which I'm gonna describe, with which everybody can attempt to make their holy water at home, in the Hindu context it's called Manas Puja, because traditionally there are, of course, countless rituals in Hinduism for everything, but there is this Manas Puja, and that is recommended in cases when one simply cannot get all these countless difficult to find as ingredients which are needed for almost every Vedic ritual. Simply means mental worship, and the essence of this method is that you imagine all the ingredients which you are lacking for the ritual, and if you perform it properly, the result will be the same, because for the Lord it doesn't matter if the rose is from our world or it's an etheric mental rose. He's got countless roses. He can make even roses which we can't imagine. What matters is our devotion. And if there is enough of that on our side invested in the ritual, there is a chance that the Lord will accept our offering. So sincerity is the main factor, but also since we are offering a water from our world, we have to adhere at least to some basic standards of purity of that water. The best is to have spring water. If not possible, if you have to use tap water, which is not a very good idea because they use like waste from hospitals, to make it, and sometimes even waters from containing sewage. And they say they purify that, but actually it's not completely purified. If you are forced by the circumstances to use tap water, then at least get a simple device for distilling water, and that will be the closest to pure living water that you can make at home. Now, the amount of water which you intend to offer to the Lord, you cannot like smell it or taste it or try it or sample it in any way before offering it to Him. If you do that, or anybody else does that, that water isn't fit for offering. You should not attempt to offer it. And although there is no way that the Western people can manage with all the purity requirements, for example, of the vessels and the environment in which you try to offer water, still I think there is some minimum which we cannot lower. Like, for example, the vessels which you use, preferably they should not have been used for anybody to drink water from, let's say, the bottles that the water is placed in. It's okay if it is, let's say, some jug which you sometimes use in the kitchen to pour water from, but avoid vessels that has been used directly for eating or drinking, because then I think there is very little chance for success in this ritual. Brand new bottles from the shop, they are okay. But you should be careful not to touch them with dirty hands, and dirty in Vedic context is way more complicated than what we call dirty, for example. Well, basically, you better touch those bottles and vessels only after you wash your hands well with soap, um, without touching anything else, because there are so many rules of what can be touched or not that it's better just to touch them only with washed hands. As much as you can, of course, that's impossible to do really in the shop, but as much as you can. And then you have to select a suitable place for the ritual. A kitchen with all kinds of alcohol around and bloody pieces of meat, half cooked, that is place inviting evil spirits. The pure gods and the saints, they may not come to that ritual, they may not take the offering. The garden, if you have some clean patch of grass where people rarely go, it's probably better, but not like a pathway. That is also considered contaminated. So try to select a relatively uncontaminated room by activities like drinking alcohol, eating meat, or watching TV. The more natural place, the higher the chances of success. And the surface on which you place the water, well, try as much as possible that the surface is free from any of the contaminating elements I listed earlier. For example, if you have a brand new piece of cloth from the shop, maybe you can put that below the entire amount of water. And if you have like a large amount of water, you can open, let's say, one bottle for the ritual. And this is where the external preparations end. From now on, the entire ritual will be on imaginary level only. To whom will you offer the water? I think the most suitable deity for our times is Christ. After you offer it to Christ, you can also invite saints, but you can't offer first to the saints and then to Christ. That you cannot do. So, how exactly to offer it to Christ? Of course, you have to concentrate and imagine Him in whatever form is easier for you. And then maybe you can offer it as something that you can offer for him to drink, or maybe you can imagine that you, in your, maybe let's say, angelic form with wings, you take a jug made out of precious stone and you wash his feet with that water. That is also a type of offering. And of course, in that environment, you should place all that water in very beautiful crystal jugs, or jugs made out of precious stones or gold, such noble materials. And in whatever form you prefer, just humbly offer it to the Lord for drinking or for washing his feet. And of course, you have to do that very respectfully with whatever elements that involves according to your understanding and your culture. Because for Muslims, I think it will not be appropriate to select a human-like avatar or manifestation of the Lord. Maybe that's against their rules. It doesn't have to be human-like to be a ritual of somehow dedicating the water to the Lord. And by the way, the same ritual can be used to offer your food to the Lord. However, not everything we eat will be eligible for offering. For example, meat, onions, garlic, mm, food that has been cooked more than 2 hours ago. All these things are not eligible. But for example, if you have like clean fruits which have not been touched with dirty hands and nobody has chewed on them, that can be offered. Or let's say a container of yogurt, because it's in a clean container already from the shop, that can be offered. And it is a very good practice to offer everything you eat or drink to the Lord first, if you can. And if you're in such a situation that whatever you eat is not really offerable, or the water doesn't comply to the requirements, then at least you should do what the Christian people call blessing one's meal. It's not really an offering to the Lord in the sense that you're expecting him to also try it before you eat it, but it's kind of expressing gratitude towards the life-giving force of the Lord, which is so miraculous, that has created this entire existence around us, of the nature, of the food, of our body, and everything else. It's an expression of gratitude. And of course, if you happen to know some mantras or prayers, this type of rituals, they are the best time to use them. And that includes the prayer to the cross mentioned earlier as well.